Turning to our top story, the annual strategic and economic dialogue between the United States and China has concluded. For more analysis of China-U.S. relations in the wake of the strategic and economic dialogue, we're joined by Victor Gao. He's director of the China National Association of International Studies. Victor, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to get to the dialogue in just a moment, but you just heard Jim Spellman's story about this allegation of hacking again. We've heard from the Chinese Foreign Ministry on this as well, saying it's a smear job. What's the best way to settle these disputes?
Well, first of all, I think the whole world knows who is doing the hacking in an extensive and very complicated manner. And therefore, between China and the United States, such allegation or accusation actually is not constructive. The better way is for China and the United States to sit down behind closed doors, compare notes, and come up with an overarching agreement so that not only between China and the United States, but also in the whole world, people will have a better way of conduct in dealing with these issues. Purely coming up with such one-sided allegation is not credible in the first place and also not constructive.
Victor, we talked about the negative, but it seems like they did cover a lot of ground in these meetings, several agreements. They reaffirmed a commitment to military relations, also agreeing on a range of international issues. What do you see as the major outcomes of the dialogue?
Well, first of all, I don't think there are any other two countries, like between China and the United States, which have such a comprehensive, in-depth, and very structured and a thorough exchange and dialogue between the two countries. We are talking about more than 90 different channels of communication, talking about almost all the important aspects in the bilateral relations, including economic trade, foreign exchange, environmental, education, exchange of people, etc. So this is definitely very, very helpful, especially between China and the United States, the two largest economies in the world, and also very much at the time when the Chinese economy is about to surpass that of the United States. The better we talk, the better we understand each other, the better we promote mutual understanding and trust. It will be better for both China and the United States, and in its turn, better for the whole world. Therefore, I think such strategic and economic dialogue, both substantively as well as symbolically, are very, very important. If we don't do this kind of exchange, the rest of the world will be unnerved. And I think we are on the right track. Despite of all the differences between our two countries, the more we talk, the better we will be in a position to overcome these differences, and the better we can serve the interests of our two nations and also the rest of the world.
You mentioned the differences. We've already touched on cybersecurity. There are some other sensitive issues, of course, the disputes in the South China Sea. Any headway there? And again, is it one of these things where most of this stuff should be just handled behind closed doors?
Well, such a strategic and economic dialogue are very structured and highly choreographed. It has advantages as well as disadvantages. I would say between Washington and Beijing, there are very sensitive issues which cannot be talked about in such a very pompous setting with lots of bells and whistles. There are issues which we need to talk about really behind closed doors in high confidence and privacy, so that we will be able to stare at each other in the eye and really pat each other on the back and come out of such private and confidential discussions as better partners and reducing our suspicion of each other. On cybersecurity, for example, of course, both China and the United States care about that, but to single-handedly and one-sidedly accuse China of being the cybersecurity violator without looking at the U.S. own track record and without looking at what the rest of the world is looking at the United States is really very self-destructive. And I think such issues can be better discussed in a very, very private manner between China and the United States. On the East China Sea and the South China Sea, of course there are differences between China and the United States. But if the United States can cite any incidents of its navigation right being infringed upon, then come to the table and raise such issues. I don't think the United States has ever come across such instance, and it has no reason to accuse China of violating international law and without being able to produce any real and concrete evidence about that. Therefore, again, from the Chinese perspective, we hope the United States will calm down and the two countries can look at the overall interest involving the two countries, rather than being distracted by case-by-case smaller issues.
Victor Gao joining us from Beijing with his analysis of the dialogue. Thanks so much.